Um, Welcome to the Blue Politics server. I'm Lil Bill, here for the AMA with Aaron Coleman. Uh, let's get right into it. The first question is, how did you get into politics?
Thank you. That's actually a very good question. Originally I like to say I've been a Bernie Sanders fan since about 2014, 2015. I kind of always supported, a single payer system. So I guess I was activated in 2016 with his presidential campaign. And for me, when Bernie Sanders called for a revolution, that was a calling. That was a calling for Americans to wake up through their slumber and really take back power in America. And really what I'm advocating for and what I was inspired by Bernie Sanders to fight for is not just political democracy, which we're losing every day, but also economic democracy, because you cannot have economic democracy um, when so many have so few, and so few have so much. I think right now the new report is 40 million Americans without food, 35 million who might be evicted on by the end of the month. So that's kind of what inspired me to get into politics. Thank you.
All right. So you being an incumbent, how you how did you at 20 years old with with the lack of college education and like worked as a dishwasher. How did you beat someone with that much experience?
Well, I think there was a large disconnect between my predecessor and the community. By large accounts, he hasn't even knocked in the community in 15 years. And this is a heavily Democratic district that actually went for Bernie Sanders in the primary in in 2016 by like 70%. Um, and he's actually an anti-abortion Democrat. In 2015, he voted to criminalize abortions. In 2011, he voted to prohibit healthcare insurance for a woman's reproductive health. And that thing, I think he lost the vote of a lot of people with that. And he was endorsed by the NRA in 2016 due to the fact that basically every single gun law in Kansas was repealed in 2015. Now there's essentially no regulation on guns. And it was a disconnect with the district. So, I ran a good campaign. I knocked every single door. I don't think my opponent took me seriously. I don't think he knocked any doors. He spent about $50,000 to I believe at the time it was about $4,000. So more than double digits. But I think it just shows people will choose policy and, quite frankly, just the person that shows up at your door. If you show up at, like, when I was knocking on these doors, people say, "Wow, I've lived here 10, 15, 20 years. Nobody has ever came to my door asking for my vote." And I believe, because in Kansas our district sizes are pretty small. It's only about 20,000 people. If you don't knock on every single door and talk to every single person, or at least make an attempt to reach that person, you cannot claim to represent everybody. And I think that's what did it for me. So thank you for the question.
Um, what is your position on universal basic income?
Yeah, yeah. I would just direct everybody to my website. It's Aaron, the word for kansashouse.com. You go into my priorities page. I actually have a universal basic income tab on there, and people ask, what is the funding revenue for universal basic income in the state of Kansas? And you kind of have to work back from there. And basically, what I've came up with is, essentially, this is a bill that I'm working on with some people, but essentially, what we are going to do is it's going to be a fine for pollution to fund our COVID economic stimulus. So essentially, what we're going to have is like a carbon tax, $200, $300 a ton, and we're going to use the revenue that this fine will generate to offset the cost that this program will have on working class Kansans. And I think most every we'll send everybody a $500 check, thereabout, no questions asked. And I think this is going to be an extremely popular issue, especially with farmers. A lot of farmers are going bankrupt right now. They could use $500 a month quick. So, and I think this is how you get your economy started. I think if we look at like FDR during the Great Depression, and the way the way to get out of a depression is you need consumers to spend money. The way to grow your economy is to have people spending money. So I think the UBI is a great idea. I think a carbon fine is a great idea. The way that we're able to put those ideas in the same bill, I think that's gonna get some people's attention in this upcoming session.
Have you built up? Have you made any alliances within the state House of Representatives to achieve your goals?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a freshman in the House. Technically, I'm not even a representative yet until this upcoming January when I'm sworn in. So it takes time. I think this anytime in politics, it's really a long-term goal. I think it was even long-term goals. But I think even Bernie Sanders said you don't really accomplish much in your first term. I think if we really look at it, Bernie Sanders' uh, first term in Congress, he couldn't even caucus with the Democrats. Southern Democrats did not want to be affiliated with a socialist. It wasn't until later on that Bernie Sanders actually started, infiltrating the Democratic circles. So I don't expect it to be an immediate, because in bodies like this, like I always get the question, how will you get Republicans to support this proposal? That's not the problem. The problem is, how do you get Democrats to even pretend they care about the working class for more than 2 seconds? Because it's that's the barrier. I think what we've seen over the last 50 years is a Democratic Party that has drifted further and further to the right in a direction that only seeks to serve their donors on Wall Street. So, it's hard to build alliances, and quite frankly, like I said, it's a long-term goal, and we're going to need more progressives or socialists even. That'd be preferable to run in 2022 and primary out these corporate Democrats. So yeah, thank you for the question.
Another question is, we saw quite a few people from the QAnon set have success during this election. Do you see this being a trend in the future?
Yeah, I don't really follow the national politics that much. I'm more focused on, my on Kansas and serving the residents of House District 37. Uh, so I'm sorry, I don't really know much about QAnon. I'm sorry.
Um, what long-term effects do you see Trumpism having on the future of politics?
I believe Trumpism is a symptom of the problem and not the problem itself. You have to realize these neoliberal policies, which we have seen from the Democratic Party for, almost 50 years now, has created the environment where fascism can grow. Because the only time fascism can really take off is when people just have they just like desperate economically, and they feel like this like strong like power man is going to give them some economic power. The only way to defeat Trumpism or fascism, whatever you want to call it, is with socialism. You have to give people a way to get out of their economic suffering. So I think Trump is, with a man, look, the Democratic Party is a disaster. So it's not going to go away because the Democrats are not going to alleviate these people's economic concerns. 65 million Americans voted for Trump. That's not going away anytime soon. Not with our Democratic leadership, at least.
And and you have said that you are in favor of Medicare for all. Why are you more in favor of Medicare for all rather than something like a public option or Obamacare?
Yeah, well, Medicare for all, I'm on the state level. That Medicare is a federal program. So for me, it would be Medicaid for all. And the way I look at it, I go back to the fundamental question of who should have health care, who should die. And when you ask that question, I believe everybody should have healthcare, full stop. Healthcare should be a human right. And I just find it insane that there'd be any point in time where we just say to ourselves, how can I profit off of this, this necessary procedure? How can I make my shareholders a a little bit richer? So for me, it's truly just a moral issue because, until all of us have healthcare, nobody really has healthcare because we're all really just, one car accident or one hospital bill away from bankruptcy. So that's kind of where I go with that.
Um, so we've seen a, steady rise in right-wing populism throughout the world. Are you hoping for more progressive future in America, or do you have a more pessimistic view about it since Trump is gaining a lot of traction?
You know, um, I would say the victors write the history. So I have a lot of concerns with people on the left. I like Twitter warriors. I think if we can get that energy, because the left has a lot of energy. I've seen this energy that's out there. This is real, like, passion. But people need to run for office because change is simply never going to come until we primary out these establishment Democrats. So I really can't say. I'm hopeful. I have hope that people will get to their senses and say, look, if this 19-year-old, 20 years old now in Kansas can win on a socialist platform in a extremely Republican state like Kansas, hopefully that's a sign to somebody to run for office because it's I don't know. I hope somebody will run and that we don't go down that road. Um, but it's probably going to take. I think in the United States we have 7,000 seats in state legislatures, so we're gonna need millions of Americans to step up. Um, so it's really we'll see. We're gonna wait out and see. So, thank you for the question.
Are you in favor of any police reforms, and if so, what should it look like?
Yeah, this is actually a very personal issue to me. I was actually in the wake of the murder, the state, well, not even the murder, the state execution of George Floyd. I was actually at the plaza, downtown KCMO, where they're having these protests. You know, Look, the reason there was a riot is because the police came out and started smashing people's faces, started smashing people's cars. I got tear gassed 5 times, pepper sprayed 3 times. I got my ass beat by the police, and I was one of the lucky ones. So when this was a police brutality protest, and they came and used more police brutality on us. Like the entire system is like rotted to the core. But what people sometimes forget is the police are simply the enforcers for an extremely broken criminal justice system. So we say, well, how can we fix our criminal justice system? I disagree with that statement because you can't fix something that has never worked. So we need fundamental change, and we need to end the war on drugs. We need more like family courts, or more like. So yeah, that's basically it. And also if you really want to look at it, abolish private prisons. That's slavery right there. That's slave labor. And actually, no, America has more slaves than the height of the slavery of the height of the Confederacy. Black Americans in jail is like millions, way more slaves in 2020 than there was 200 years ago. This is insane, and it just shows you capitalism cannot function without slavery.
Um, so you are aware that there's like a bunch of allegations going around you, and I was wondering if you had any further comment to say about the um, the stuff involving your girlfriend, about the abuse. Do you have any information you want to bring to light, or
Yeah, if the voters thought I was unfit to serve, then they would have elected the other guy. At a point, this is democracy, and if those people picked me to be the representative, then I'm the representative. I'm gonna keep my head down and do my homework and not try to get any more headlines for a while. But these people elected me, and I'm gonna do a job. At some point this becomes democracy, and Kansas values. I don't think cancel culture is Kansas values, because if you look at our state motto, ad astra per aspera, it means to the stars with difficulty. So I think that's the direction we're gonna try to go in.
Um, so the Democratic establishment, there's been a petition to get you removed. And they are making moves to have you removed. Do you think they'll get the majority in the House of Representatives to have your seat vacated?
I actually kind of find that kind of hilarious. The Kansas Dams are like high school girls who won't let the new girls sit with them at the cafeteria table. But really, who wants to sit with them anyway? Like, it's like ugh. But truthfully though, if you look at it, as soon as the Democrats say they were going to kick me out, the Republicans said, "Oh, sorry, no, I'm serious." But they have to have 2/3 of the chamber to do anything. The Democrats have less than 1/3, so they would need to have every single Democrat vote to impeach, basically, and like half of Republicans, like +7. So it's and the Republican Speaker of the House is like, no, this is a Democratic problem. I respect democracy, which brings up a new point. How can you call yourself democratic if as soon as your neoliberal guy loses, you just like throw out the election results? I don't know. That's not very democratic.
Um, well, um, there's a petition going around that have to get you removed. And it has more signatures than you did get votes. So would that be more democracy working in that case, or?
Look, people have some well, look, the only votes that truly matter at this point is the 125 members of the Kansas legislature, and I'm telling you, it's 2/3 Republican. Democrats have no votes. Like, if people, even if you could get every single Democrat to impeach, you know but I mean, I think the fundamental question, I think I would have a very good legal defense. And there's two facts. Let me this if the trial goes down, here's my two facts that my defense team's gonna bring up. Okay, fact number one: I have never been arrested as an adult. Okay, fact number one: never been arrested as an adult. Number two: I have never committed and will never commit any misconducts in office. How can you impeach? Simple. It's as simple as that. They're not going to get 2/3 votes. So if people have a petition, look, I'm not sweating over it. I'm really not sweating over it. I'm focused on my job. So if you would like, I'll talk to you more about policy and how I can do what I can do to help people in my community.
Okay, so we are going to take a slight change in direction. Are you a gamer?
Yeah, when I have some free time, I like to play, some Steam games. I'm not sure if a lot of people are familiar with the Europa Universalis series. On the fourth version now, or Crusader Kings 3. Some grand strategy games. Um, yeah, yeah, I do play some games. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so another question is, what do you think needs to be done to promote social and racial justice?
I think what you need is you need grassroots efforts in the communities, and I think what we see in places like Kansas is we have large communities of people of color. They don't vote. They because nobody's reached them. We need to go out in these communities of color, register them to vote, get them to vote, and we need to get representation that more accurately reflects our minority communities, because so far these people have no voice at all in Kansas. Not even within the Kansas Democrats. What I have found, If you go to any meetings, it's like in Kansas, it's like white members only, essentially. And no, no, that's true. That's people. I ask people this, like, do you know why the KKK left Kansas in the 40s and 50s? The
Why?
reason the reason the KKK left Kansas is because they were successful in their agenda. They completed they checked the list for everything they seeked out to accomplish, so they just disbanded. There's a great book, KKK and KCK, Kansas City, Kansas, um, and basically, if you go to the back of the book, it has a list of all these names. It's like 2,000 different names of the members in the 40s. And if guarantee it, look, if you look at the names in the back of the book, look at the last names of the people in our government right here in Wyandotte County. Almost every single last name is in the back of that book. Um, so that's it's racist money is what it is. It's racist money, and they're very entrenched. So
You brought up about a point about prison labor and slavery and how they're connected. Um, what are your thoughts about Vice President-elect Kamala Harris?
yeah, I was hoping for, it's like I ordered a Coke, and they gave me a Pepsi. I was hoping for Bernie Sanders as president, AOC vice president. Um, it's a disaster. Like I said, the Democratic Party is just a disaster. Um, it's really as much as I can say. I mean, hey, we broke the glass ceiling, so it's progress. At least it's some progress. I will not acknowledge that.
Um, do you think China is currently a threat to America?
Defined threat.
Do you think they threaten national security or pose just in general a threat?
I would say the American government threatens its own people's security. I think what we're looking at is just like a slaughter of the American people by the Trump administration. I think this is gonna go down in history as like a black plague or something because it's just killing so many people. Um, I think this has already killed more than like the London plague. So if we're worried about threats, let's focus on the American government because I'm gonna be honest, the American government has more influence on your life than the Chinese government. So I'm not too concerned about what China's doing. We probably need to get out of these foreign wars and probably just like stop killing Americans. Like that would probably be the ideal situation.
Um, Another person asked, do you find yourself looking forward to taking your political career further from here?
This is something that I was very consistent on when I was knocking door to doors. When it comes to state representative, I will. This is my first term, obviously, but I will only seek re-election once, serving a maximum of 4 years.
What do you think should be done to help the Kansas economy recover?
Yeah, I think we already discussed, one topic like we were saying, the way FDR got us out of the Great Depression, which was with spending, with a UBI. That's one mechanism. Another way is, legalizing cannabis. Kansas is currently one of three states that still considers any amount of cannabis whatsoever a felony. And actually, legalizing cannabis will generate two new sources of revenue for our state. Number one, we'll save millions of dollars a year um, on not having to pay and incarcerate somebody for something safer than alcohol. And then secondly, it'll create millions of dollars in new tax revenue, which in turn can be reinvested into our schools and infrastructure. And as a son of a teacher, I believe that our teachers and students deserve the best. And it is not enough just to say, let's spend more money on kindergarten to 12th grade. In addition to that, I would also like to see tuition-free trade schools and tuition-free community colleges so people can get a degree, work the degree, and actually get ahead in life. And I think this once we have um, a skilled pool of a skilled workforce that employers can pull from, this is going to grow the economy because our corporations or companies in Kansas won't have to go out of state for skilled labor. So I think that's the direction we need to go into. I think we're seeing other states go in that direction, and I hope to see Kansas go in that direction soon.
So, will you be hiring any political experts to make up your office team, or will it just be you?
Well, you have to understand, as a state representative, my legislative salary is a whopping $7,000 a year. Let me $7,000 a year. Um, yeah, I don't get a staff. It's unfortunate, but it's part of this. It's part of the design. They design it like that because they want you to be wealthy to be in government. That's kind of why I can't afford to do this long term. You know, I'll do my one term. I'll get reelected once if the people want me still. But after that, I can't afford it. 7,000 a year. So I don't have any staff, and that's unfortunate because what it forces you to do is rely solely on lobbyist information, which is part of that's the intent. Is they want you to rely on that lobbyist information because you don't have a staff, you don't have a salary to afford a staff, so you kind of out of luck there. Um,
Um, Speaking of like outside groups, are you associated with any such as like the DSA?
Honestly, I think DSA has done good work in maybe New York, but I think I've been hard pressed to find a DSA chapter out of New York that has been successful. I think DSA might likely be possibly token opposition set up by possibly the CIA. I kid, but no, they're not very effective. No, actually, what we got work in the works here locally in Kansas City, and we're currently in the bylaw writing stage. We got to set up with the IRS and everything. It's probably going to take us about 6 months, but looking at starting a chapter locally of Social Democrats USA, and this is going to allow us to, field candidates and actually build some institutional power. So I'm looking forward to starting a local chapter of the Social Democrats here in KC.
So, will you ever make a run for national politics, or will you just do your 2 terms in the state and then get out of politics?
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of thing with this line of work. You kind of just look at the next election. It's kind of hard to see. Maybe I might even want to come back in 2 years. It's kind of hard to say with that. But I'll serve as long as I'm needed.
So, what issues do you see striking Kansas today that were effectively created by the politicians in power?
Yeah, I think with the Kansas. Well, basically, Kansas is just it's just got hit hard. About 4 years ago, we had this governor Sam Brownback. It was the biggest tax cut, corporate welfare. In the history in the country. But what happened is usually when Republicans do something like that is when if they cut the taxes by like 50% or whatever, they usually cut the budget as well. Interesting enough, they cut the taxes, left the budget the same. Kansas is currently, I think it's like $1.1 trillion in debt. You have to realize like our annual budget is only like $17 billion, so that's a lot of debt to have when your budget is only like 17 billion. It's going to take us like 20 years or possibly more to pay back all this money. Um, like just the budget. Like just in interest alone, we're paying like $700 million, maybe $300 million just on the interest on these loans. So it's not good. This is what happens when you vote Republican, and unfortunately, um, Kansas Democrats cannot win elections because they're very very ineffective. Um, so it's not good. It's not good.
Um, What are your thoughts around the border wall that Trump has been trying to push, and Joe Biden is has said that he would be open to building some of the border wall?
Yeah, no, I don't really get much into the federal politics. I can't really um, comment on any of that, on any speculation on that.
Um, what are your thoughts on Andrew Yang?
Yeah, I think NG Yang, he really was fighting for the universal basic income. You know, somebody actually sent me his book for my 20th birthday. That was appreciated. Um, yeah, hopefully he'll make a run for the president again. Hopefully, maybe U.S. Senate. Following him close, I see he's out there in Georgia right now, doing what he can. This man is really a miracle worker. Um, I like NG Yang.
Um, so in the 2020 election, we saw quite a few losses in the House and everywhere that the Democrats did not flip. Um, they took heavy losses, especially with blue dog Democrats. You see this as do you see this as people getting more excited for Trump, or do you see this as the failure of the blue dog Dems to appeal to the people?
This should be the death of the Democratic Party. The progressive movement predicted this, and the progressive movement could have prevented this, because what happens is people, if you give them the choice of a Republican light or the genuine article, they choose the genuine article each and every time. It just doesn't work. You cannot straddle the fence, and we saw this here in Kansas. Democrats were projected to elect their very first U.S. senator in Kansas in like 100 years. What happened is I was very hopeful as well. I was hopeful for this to happen, but unfortunately, the Democrats put up a candidate who, throughout the campaign, made it seem like they supported a Green New Deal, seemed like they supported Medicare for all, and like 2 weeks, 3 weeks for the election, they came out with a live TV ad saying, I denounce Medicare for all. I denounce Green New Deal. I am a moderate. You could not make this stuff up. And actually, if you look at the exit polls, young people, young people in Kansas went for the Republican over the Democrat, because when they did that, when they said Green New Deal bad, Medicare for all bad, working class bad, all the younger people stayed home, and it tanked us. We were told, like in the Kansas legislature, we were told we were supposed to pick up like 5 seats in the Kansas House. They needed 1 seat to break the supermajority and uphold the governor's veto and guarantee that we don't get gerrymandered out of existence. Not only did they not gain the 5 seats they were projected, or even break the supermajority, they lost 3 seats. The jokes. Now we're gonna get gerrymandered out of existence, because Kansas Democrats and just Democrats nationally cannot win elections ever in any scenario.
Um, how do you suggest that someone who wants to start a career in politics start?
Yeah, just run for office. That's the first step. It's a great book I would recommend. It's running for excuse me, it's Running for Office for Dummies. Great book. I think it's like maybe 200 pages. It's an easy read. Maybe it's 250 pages, but yeah, just run for something. I mean, look, I think if there's anything my victory has demonstrated, the fact that I got elected at 19 years old with no political experience, got outspent by double digits, with my baggage. If I can get elected, come on, anybody can get elected. It's just, I think what we see is it's about how much effort do you put in. I was out there for like 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, in the 100-degree heat, humid Kansas heat. Um, and I think that's what won me the vote. Do you want to put in the work? Do you want to knock doors? And I think maybe start small. Find a district where you can actually knock on a large percentage, if not all, doors personally. Of course, you can get people to help you knock doors, but on a local race, really you're the star, and you should be at people's front perch personally.
Um, so do you think the federal government has become too influential compared to state governments, or do you want more local or state governance than national slash federal?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. If depends, like I mean, I guess in the state of Kansas, you're kind of hoping the federal government's going to just save you from your state. Um, so I guess it depends. Like if you get like ideally, like if we could have good state governments, then I could say okay, maybe let the federal government back off. But no, I think we probably need a more encompassing federal government. You know, the Voting Rights Act has been essentially abolished simply because what the courts have ruled in this country is the federal government has no authority to do anything. I disagree with that. Like I support federalism. I think there should be a balance between the states and the federal government. But I think you know. So yeah, thank you for the question.
Do you think Democrats, Republicans, or others can win offices from city up to state level by running on single payer healthcare in your state?
Yeah, honestly, I think if the Republican Party adopted single payer healthcare, they would never lose an election, like ever. And the same with the Democratic Party. If they adopted single payer healthcare, they would never lose a race ever. I think they've done the studies. 70% of Republicans in Kansas support some form of socialized medicine. Um, they even support the Green New Deal. I think it was a large percentage of Republicans in Kansas support the government spending more money on renewable energy. So it's that's the problem is the Democratic Party runs away from its base. They don't stand for anything, and we saw this in Florida actually. Florida went with Trump, but over 60% of the people voted for a $15 minimum wage, which was interesting because $15 minimum wage was actually the the Biden platform, but it was on the website, and nobody looks at the website, and they never talked about platform at all ever. So so yeah, I think if we get some more issue focused uh campaigns going, I think Democrats can win up and down the ballot. But currently, we're gonna have more and more red waves until these Democrats get primaried out. Change is only gonna come if people primary Democrats.
So, do you think um, state debt is an issue at all, or do you think it should be tackled or not?
Can you repeat the question?
Um, like debt acquired through the state government, do you think it should be tackled, or do you think it?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, it's in the Kansas Constitution. We were required to run a balanced budget. So actually, what that Republican governor did by taking on all this debt was actually unconstitutional. So yeah, we shouldn't have debt anyway on the state level because it's not like with the federal government where we can just print unlimited money and it really doesn't matter. You can't quite do that on the state level. So it's kind of insane that the Republicans hijacked the state apparatus to cut their buddies' taxes and violate and stomp on the Kansas Constitution, which is very clear that the state budget must not have deficit.
Um, so Trump's campaign has sued a number of states to get mail-in ballots invalidated so that he could win those states. Do you see this as a threat to democracy, or do you think this is just dumb strategy?
I don't think it's a threat to democracy, but it is bad precedent. I think we just bless our lucky stars that our wannabe dictator just wasn't just like slightly more competent. Um,
Okay, so do you think the Electoral College should exist?
Actually, give it about 5, 10 years, the Democrats are going to be worshiping the Electoral College, and I say this because it's almost a mathematical like guarantee that in 10 years, Democrats, I mean Texas is going to go blue and it's going to stay blue, and when this happens, as long as we can keep the Electoral College intact, Republicans will never get elected again in history. And I think when this occurs, or the possibility that this is going to occur no matter what, I'm curious to see if liberals will start to support the electoral college again, because it would mean that Democrats could lose the popular vote by millions, and still you could never elect another Republican for president again. Um,
All right. So, what are your opinions on third parties in America?
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what we're trying to do here in Wyandotte County, starting the Kansas City Social Democrats. We're basically just going to hijack the Democratic Party's ballot access, or in the case of local government, it's nonpartisan, um, so we can just use our own ballot access that way. So yeah, I think that's the future. You need technically we're organized. It's going to be organized as a membership club, but it's going to be like a 501c4 something like that, um, so we can actually donate to political candidates. um, so yeah, no, change is only going to come if people primary these corporate Democrats. So if you need a third party, which is what we're setting up here in Kansas City to support our candidates, um, I think that's a good initiative, and I'd like to see more of those chapters spring up around the country.
Um, with the loss of Trump in the 2020 election, we've already seen a divide between the pro-Trump faction and the establishment, where Marco Rubio has already stated that he's running in 2024. A bunch of other people are most likely going to run, but Trump has already said that he's most likely to run in 2024. You see this manifesting itself also on the state level, where you have breakaway factions.
I don't necessarily think you'd see it on the state level. The Trump thing, it's a cult. It's not gonna happen. There's no Trump on the state level. He's one man. Regardless, if him running for president in 2024, I guess we'll just see if he's still alive. Um,
Um, do you think, um, as well for the Democrats, do you think the progressive stock Dems should go off and form their own separate party, or do you think that would end up hurting everyone in the end?
Honestly, I think the most effective use of our time, since the hardest thing to get in this country is ballot access, may as well just take the ballot access from the Democrats, hijack the party infrastructure. Um, that's how you do it. And hijack the party infrastructure. It's not hard. Progressives win when progressives try. The reason progressives haven't taken over the country is because if you look at it, I've looked at it, these people run unopposed. Nobody primaries them. Look at who's your state representative. Most people don't even know who their state representative is. Or who's your state representative 2 districts over. Most of these times, move over 2 blocks, go to a different state rep. If they've never been challenged before, challenge them. That's where change is gonna come. I don't think a third party is gonna work, just because you need that ballot access. And it's two birds with one stone, because by taking the Democrats' ballot access, not only do you gain ballot access for yourself, but you take ballot access away from the neoliberals.
So, do you support ranked choice voting? And if you do, what do you think can be done in the current political climate to promote this in the local, state, or federal government?
Yeah, no, I support ranked choice voting, automatic mail-in ballots, compulsory voting. I think those three are just the should be the foundations to a liberal democracy. It's probably most likely to come through probably the state level. I don't think the federal government. I don't think we're going to see anything come out of the federal government for probably the next 20 years. Realistic, nothing good for the working class anyway. So yeah, so people need to focus on state and local, and then some, I'd have to look into it more, but I think in some places, the cities or possibly even the counties run their own elections, and for the city elections at least, they could possibly implement ranked choice voting. So that begs the question: is will progressives um, run for mayor? And I hope they do.
All right. When you say hijacking the party infrastructure, are you speaking almost entirely of voters getting meaningfully involved in the primaries or other things as well?
I think people need to recognize that there's a civil war within the Democratic Party, and you need to fight to ensure your side wins. It's going to come solely through the primary process. Um, there's no other process. You have to win the Democratic primary to take over the Democratic Party.
Um, what is your thoughts on Second Amendment issues?
Yeah, I would just if I would encourage everybody to go to my website. But my core belief is, I do respect the Second Amendment and the Constitution, and I do support open carry, but I also at the same time I support the first four words of the Second Amendment, which states simply in a well regulated militia. And I believe we need just like the most simple of regulations to ensure that our militia is well regulated. I want a universal background check. I want a gun license, like because just like for car, car is a deadly weapon. A vehicle is a deadly weapon that can kill people quite easily. In the same sense, a gun can also be quite dangerous in the hands of an untrained individual. So I would like to see, some sort of gun licensing where people just have to answer 25 questions. Do not like, why do you not, why, what is the reason why you don't lean your rifle up against the fence? Oh, because if it means that means you're going to climb it and you're going to get shot in the crotch. Okay, those kind of questions. Most gun owners are going to be able to answer those questions regardless. This is just to weed out people who think it's acceptable to leave their pistol on the nightstand and little Johnny goes and picks his nose with it. We have too many of those stories. Um, so yeah, and the third one we need is like a red flag law. But I think for that policy to be even close to fair or effective, there needs to be a lot of due process, and there needs to be like an overwhelming standard of proof that this person, is a danger to themselves. But unfortunately, right now in Kansas, what we have is kind of an anti-red flag law. Well, even if there's like a mountain of evidence that this person is hell bent on shooting themselves or others, the judge can't do anything, and there's not even a legal case. Um,
Speaking of that, what are your thoughts on the Socialist Rifle Association?
say that again.
Um, there's an organization such as the Socialist Rifle Association, I think NRA, SRA. Um, are you in favor of more left-wing groups are based around firearms, or
I don't have enough information on that to come to an opinion. I've just learned about that just very recently.
all
Um,
right? Um, so can you explain more about your opinions on the justice system?
Yeah, I think some things we need to look at is a body camera mandate, just so we can have that transparency in police encounters. We need to legalize cannabis so we can stop paying people into prison for victimless crimes. We need to invest more into mental health care, and I think it's either a third, maybe it's even like two-fifths possibly of prisoners in our prisons are there who are there have mental health problems. Um, if you do the two things, you've already eliminated half your prisoners. Legalize drugs and focus on mental health. You've already eliminated half your prisoners. And once you get rid of all this capacity that you need, you can start to eliminate private prisons, because there becomes a point where there's just not that many prisoners, and the state can just effectively deliver those resources.
Um, so what solutions do you have towards the mental health issues within your state on a state level? I mean,
Yeah, I honestly believe, the Medicaid fall is probably required, honestly. Um, We need to stop treating mental health care as a commodity or something that we profited off on. Because I know locally, I live just very close to KU Medical. The problem is if somebody's on Medicaid and they need some some mental health they need some mental health services. Everybody on Medicaid gets referred to just this one hospital, and it's like a 5 month wait for just one counseling visit. But the problem is, if you're somebody if you have depression, you might not be alive in five months. If you have depression, just making it through the day might be a struggle. So we need to take out that profit motive. That's you know, I asked this. I've had this conversation with a lot of conservatives, and I just say, quite frankly, name one nation on the world with privatized healthcare, and and where does it work? Where's one nation on earth that has privatized healthcare and it works? I've yet to get a response to that answer, because there is no nation where it has worked.
So do you see what do you have aside from Medicare for all, do you have any other um plans to deal with mental health issues, such as like expansion of group homes for autistic adults or stuff like that?
Yeah, I don't really have all the specifics on that. Um, my first priority is just to make sure people can even access it in the first place. I guess is where I come from on that.
Do you have any specific pieces of legislation that you're pushing as of right now?
I'm trying to write. I'm doing the groundwork on a Medicaid for all bill. This I've actually was able to save some time on this by taking large contents of the content for this bill. It was actually there's actually previously proposed single payer system was proposed in the Vermont legislature. That proposal, unfortunately failed. It was sabotaged by blue dog Democrats and Republicans who refused to sufficiently raise taxes. So I'm going to learn from their mistakes over there, account for those factors and those roadblocks that they ran into. Hope to get that bill up. That's going to be a big one. Another one we discussed previously that I'm working on is the UBI carbon fine. Use a carbon fine to fund the UBI, but really, there's a lot more bills than that, and I look forward to announcing them as they're released.
Um, what what committees are you looking to become members of for the state government?
Yeah, I'm just gonna let leadership know that wherever they choose to pit me, I'm gonna do my work and I'm gonna do my homework. All I'm gonna ask for is 2 or 3 committees, and I don't care what you give me. I'm gonna do my work.
Is there any LGBTQ issues that you want to bring forward within the state legislature?
Yeah, no, that's actually very interesting. Equality Kansas, which is like the main LGBTQ plus organization in the state house, has actually asked me not to speak on that issue, and saying they would not send any of their people to come talk to me. So out of respect for that, I mean, I don't think that's a very constructive approach, but I guess that's the stance their organization has decided to take. So in respect of that, um, that's all I really have to say.
Um, what do you think your chances of getting reelected to your seat being since the the baggage came out after you got elected?
Yeah, I mean the thing is you have to you can't defeat nobody with I mean you can't defeat somebody with nobody, and that's the problem I think we're gonna run into. So I'm not sweating. I'm gonna do my work. I'm gonna fulfill my campaign promises. I said I was gonna sponsor Medicaid for all bill. I'm gonna do that. I said I'm gonna sponsor something to help protect disabled veterans like my father. I'm gonna do that. I said I'm gonna sponsor a universal basic income. I'm gonna do that. Um, So if people have voted for a Green New Deal Democrat once, if the people still feel they are represented by somebody who shares those values, I'm more than glad to serve a second term. But I do serve at the pleasure of the people in House District 37. So at the end of the day, that is their choice, but I'm not gonna sweat over it. Um, I will be happy with whatever the determination is made on that.
Um, so aside from the are you a SOCDEM or are you a full-on socialist?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what perspective you're looking at. I support a lower marginal tax rate than Republican President Eisenhower. I believe initially President Eisenhower, I think it was initially at the beginning of his term, it was like a 92% tax rate. He ended up getting that down to about 72%, maybe it was 70%. I would like maybe a 68%, create two more tax brackets. So from that perspective, I probably, I am, was FDR? No, nowadays FDR would be like a Maoist. Like, am I right? like FDR would be like a Maoist. Like nowadays, it's just these labels just don't make any sense. Like these labels have just been. I try my best to keep myself out of a like. I don't want to put myself in a box, but I feel like these issues, these policies that we discuss, um, Medicare for all, helping the working class, people I feel like people don't really care if you call it socialism, yourself a social democrat, a progressive, Green New Democrat. People don't really care what you call it. They just want to know you're going to work for them and work to improve the material conditions of their life.
Are you in favor of more subsidies towards worker co-ops?
Yeah, I mean we need to. I mean Kansas is currently a work at will state. We can be filed at will. So yeah, that kind of there's no unions in Kansas, so there's definitely a lot of work we could do to support our unions. Um,
Um, do you believe in ending fossil fuel subsidies, or do you think it's still a necessary part to a lot of the
oh
rural
no,
work that your state
no,
does?
we need subsidies for renewable energy. We need to ban coal. Uh, we were told we needed to ban coal about 10 years ago. So behind schedule, we need to ban coal immediately. Um, some of these coal plants, it's very easy to convert it to natural gas, and they say, oh, gas is like the cleanest fossil fuel, but that's really not saying much because fossil fuels are so extremely dangerous that even converting the coal to the fossil fuel I mean, excuse me, converting the coal to the natural gas only it doesn't even buy you any time because, like I said, we're already 10 years behind schedule. Um, it's a disaster. Like we're honestly at this point. When I turned 50 years old in 2050, Florida would be 2/3 underwater. The Amazon rainforest would be a Sahara desert. Um, our drinking water will be unsafe. It already is. Where I live here in Wyandotte County, our drinking water has currently 10 times the safe amount of uranium in our water. So, and you get that from burning coal, by the way. Um, so it's crazy.
Do you have any plans to retrofit? Do you have any like pieces of legislation you want to bring forward to retrofit some of the equipment that the farmers use to make them more environmentally friendly, or so that they're less impacted by a ban on fossil fuels?
Yeah, I mean that could definitely be an option. Maybe some tax credits. You know, for farmers if they invest into these resources. But really, what we need to do is we need to re-prairie Kansas. Kansas used to be the home of the buffalo, prairie grass, and if you really look at it, prairie grassland has the ability to cycle carbon at a rate almost double of woodland forest. So if we really want to have a obviously we need to have sustainable agricultural which we're currently not doing. But also another thing is, how about we pay some farmers, buy the land off of them, and return some of this land back to prairie land. Um, Prairie Kansas.
Um, do you have any plans for the Native American communities within your state? Uh, do you what plans do you have to further their rights? Or
Yeah, I honestly think that the environmental issues go hand in hand with the Native Americans, because if you really look at it, the people who are going to be disproportionately affected by the environment is the Native Americans, or communities who are going to have struggle with finding clean access to water. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of Indians left in Kansas, because what we actually saw in Kansas is they killed like a million buffalo. The buffalo population actually for a time got down to 200, and that was all because of Kansas. In fact, because the white colonialists came in and killed out all the buffalo to try to force all, and they were successful in forcing most pretty much all the Indians to Oklahoma out of Kansas.
speaking of farming, um, that a few like a question ago, what is your thoughts on water preservation?
Yeah, we have to end like monocropping, and if you look at the aquifer in Western Kansas, it's gonna dry out in about 20 years, and it's gonna be like a famine if that happens. I think people are really underestimating on how much food is grown in Kansas. I think Kansas supplies like a large percentage of it's either like wheat or corn of like the nation. A lot of that goes to animal feed. So in 20 years, when this aquifer in Western Kansas dries up, like there's gonna be some serious food lines. So it's a serious problem. Water conservation is a serious problem, and like I said, I think that one of the best ways to manage that is end monocultures and go back to prairie land. Another thing is we need to just stop having like massive ass farms. Quite honestly, I think if you look at like an acre of corn makes maybe $200 a year. Um, Wheat is a little bit less, at maybe about 140, $150 a year per acre. Um, CBD hemp, on the other hand, is $50,000 an acre, and that's when used for CBD. If you could imagine growing cannabis out in the field, you're talking at least like $250,000 per acre. Like this is, especially if you cook that down to concentrate and just flood the market in other states. I truly believe like the potential in Kansas is just like off the charts, and we can use that revenue to just buy this land from the farmers and convert it back to prairie, and that might potentially save the Kansas aquifer. But at this point, it might just be a ticking time bomb. Um,
What are your thoughts on the e-cigarette legislation that they pushed in New York and the Democrats are trying to push in the federal um, government, basically stating that you can't sell flavored nicotine products.
um, I'm an eco-socialist libertarian. I think that is an infringement on people's rights. If people want to smoke like chocolate flavored THC cartridges, that is fine with me. Strawberry THC cartridges, I have no issue with that. I do have an issue with some government bureaucrat in a suit telling me what flavor of THC I can smoke. That's a big issue, and I'm definitely opposed to that level of regulation coming from my government.
Um, so you say to reduce down the monocultural farming, um, but wouldn't that have some sort of impact on the export economy for Kansas?
You have to understand we're gonna have no export economy if this aquifer dries up, and I think even the Republicans in Kansas are starting to realize this, because actually in some parts of Kansas you're having farms just like disappear overnight because we're already starting to have areas in Kansas where they have no water left, because all this water they suck it up from underground. That's where all the water comes from. It comes from underground. It doesn't get replenished from the rain like you would think, because it just, when it rains, it just washes off and just goes into the river basin. It just goes, the river takes all the water off, and all this underground water is almost completely gone. It's a miracle that there's even any water left in it. So if we're talking about an export economy, imagine, what the number one industry, in Kansas is agriculture. It's going to be a disaster if this aquifer cannot be saved. So if we that means cutting our number one export, which is agriculture here in Kansas, by a third, in order to save the other 2/3, that might be necessary. I mean, it's either that or we're gonna have nothing. It's gonna be famine.
Uh, so you spoke a lot about crops and all that. What about the meat industry?
Yeah, I think the meat industry has a lot of potential. I think Gardner City processes, it's like 50, 60, possibly 60% of all the meat in the United States. Maybe it's 40% actually. But anyway, a lot of the meat that you eat, like if you got a good juicy steak, it probably came from Kansas. So I think that's a good source of revenue for our economy. Um, of course, we probably need to look at sustainable farming, but we need to look at a balance between how can we make this sustainable for the environment, but also how do you also keep the meat industry here in Kansas? Um, and I think we can find a balance between those two.
Um, so would you support sanctuary city legislation in Kansas?
Actually, I would I don't think that would be effective. What I've been proposing is a sanctuary state. I think this needs to be proposed at the state level. What I've been proposing, talk about for a while now, is essentially we need some sort of state, some sort of state legislation, basically saying that any state agency or any local administration, the county or city, whatever, who receives state funds, you are prohibited from cooperating with ICE in any manner, or you lose your state funding. Essentially, is your other option. Um, so basically, we would just stop. Basically, the state of Kansas needs to say, "Well, look, we're not going to pay the deport people anymore because it just doesn't make sense from a fiscal standpoint on the budget." It also doesn't make sense from an economic standpoint because these are people in our community who are working jobs. Employers are having a hard time finding skilled labor as it is. Um, so in fact, not only do we need to probably prohibit, like abolish ICE, but I'd also like to see some sort of legislation allowing, maybe not, we can't really give people a federal citizenship, but on the state level, can we give them Kansas citizenship? How about we give them, as I was researching this, a state can actually give people, like we could give non-citizens the voting powers within Kansas. Because in this scenario, they would be Kansas citizens. That's obviously a long-term goal. Obviously it is like 3/4 Republican in Kansas in the legislature, but I would support that. I believe everybody's a human. There's no such thing as an illegal person. The person themselves is an illegal. They might be undocumented, but let's give them the documentation in that scenario.
So you stated that you were an eco-socialist libertarian. What is your plan for legalizing drugs, for example?
Yeah, like I said, Kansas is one of three states in the nation um, that still has cannabis as a felony. It's kind of disappointing. Realistically, Kansas is probably 20 years away from even discussing medical cannabis, but you know, unfortunately, yes. But no, I would like to see, maybe decriminalized psilocybin mushrooms, decriminalized cannabis, or maybe we could even just pay it to the counties, like say, let the individual counties, there's 125 counties, let them vote on it. and see what they think, and just have the law go by county basis. Really, anything would be an improvement over our current system, which is like it's like a felony for everything. A single gram of cannabis, if you get caught the second time, it's a felony charge. Um, Usually, it's a double felony, in fact, because they usually try to throw you with distribution as well. So it's a tire failure on the system. But no, I think realistically, long term, what they're doing in Portugal, or I believe it's Oregon or Washington, where every drug is legal, is probably the path I like to see other states go into. Treat drug use as a social problem and not a criminal problem.
In Oregon and Portugal, they decriminalize opioids. Uh, it's not actually legalized. Um, Speaking of the drugs, do you favor making advertising drugs on television illegal?
Yeah, I mean you don't see that in the United Kingdom. You don't see that in Europe. Europe was the EU was very good at making sure that doesn't happen because it doesn't really make sense. You know, the American people are not medical professionals. They don't really need to be. This drug is proven by our advertising company. No, it's a scam. Yeah, so it does need to be eliminated, but that's actually a federal issue. The state legislature doesn't have any responsibility over the FCC. Um, which actually, I guess the Joe Biden presidency, he could just appoint whoever he wants to the FCC, but he's not gonna do it.
Oh, speaking of the FCC, what's your opinion on um internet privacy, like being able to own your data, like the law that California just passed, where they have to give you a write up of all the data they collect on you, or somehow pay you for the data they use.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they should even be able to collect the data in the first place. I mean, that's a constitutional violation right there. The right to privacy. And you have to realize not only are they collecting the information, but they're handing it directly over to the FBI and your state's local intelligence agency as well. I mean, I think Edward Snowden has exposed that quite easily. You have no privacy, and everybody always talks about, oh, don't get the vaccine, they're gonna put a chip in you. But people don't realize you got a chip like this size in your pocket. Like they got you on video anytime they want you. There's no privacy, and really anything we can do on the state level, it's not going to do anything, honestly. That's we need like a constitutional amendment at that point. Um, to actually give people like constitutional rights, because you have no privacy in America. It's seriously an authoritarian nightmare. Like you can go to prison for not even like hurting anybody. Like you can just be minding your own business and go straight to jail. Like do not skip go. Do not collect $200. Um, it's crazy.
Um, what is your thoughts around copyright and IP reform?
Yeah, and I think that's more of a federal issue. I can't really, um, I haven't really researched that per se.
All right. Um, so what is your thoughts on the Patriot Act, just in general?
Can you
Oh,
what
what are your thoughts on the Patriot Act in general?
and what is the Patriot Act?
Basically, it states that the U.S. government can search any of your data for any reason without a warrant.
Oh yeah, I mean that's basically what we were just talking about just now. Essentially you have no privacy rights. Edward Snowden. It's the deep state. I mean you have no privacy at all. I mean obviously it needs to be changed immediately. We need a constitutional amendment, something, because you have no privacy. It's like man, it's a nightmare. It's an authoritarian nightmare, and the American people are just asleep.
So, how do you plan on getting the sanctuary state legislation passed through Republicans.
Yeah,
What do you think
I
about
mean,
James?
you have to realize as a Democrat in the super minority, you can basically vote. I mean, but no, basically, let me just put it this way: as a Democrat in the super minority, you may as well not even vote. You may as well like it doesn't like because here's the thing: the Republicans they don't need a single vote, a single Democratic vote to pass any legislation. So really, what my job really is, obviously no legislation is going to come out of Topeka that's going to help Kansas. That's just right there off the top. It's mostly going to be a lot of defensive work, just playing defensive and hoping the Republicans don't get like too mean spirited. But really, there's no power to do anything about it. Unfortunately, this is what people have voted for. This is what people continue to vote Republicans who are gonna ban abortion, who are gonna ban gay marriage. That's all on the table this next session, and that's what people have voted for. It's insane. It's sad, and it's a disgrace that this is the state of Kansas.
As well, so one of our users states that the meat industry uses up more water than typical agriculture. Um, and you were saying we should focus more on that, but the problem is we have a lack of water. So wouldn't it be counterintuitive just to focus on the meat industry rather than the crops?
Yeah, I mean that's just a really good source of revenue for the state of Kansas. But I think it can be balanced out. Like if we can stop some of this, because it's specifically what I'm concerned about is the Kansas aquifer in western Kansas. If we can convert some of this land from wheat and corn to prairie grass, we could really save the aquifer just right there. And I think because it has to be sustainable, it has to be a balance. You can have meat production, you can have crop production, but it has to be a balance between production and like what are you giving back like to the environment. And I think what we see is these prairie grass, like you wouldn't need a whole lot, honestly, because like I said, the prairie grass processes twice the carbon, it's absorbing the water better than the crops. So if you just get some of that prairie grass in, I think you can still have everything. You just can't have it at the same scale. It's gonna have to be scaled back a little bit, but we have to be sustainable in that.
All right, I'm just waiting on people to post their questions. Where do you hope to see yourself in 5, 10, or even 20 years?
Yeah, I'm hoping actually maybe this year, maybe next year, or I'm really just trying to join maybe the Army National Guard, possibly join the military. That seems to be the safe bet for for somebody of working class nowadays is just to join the military if you want to escape poverty. So that might be an interesting avenue that I'm currently looking into post politics.
All right. Have you ever watched House of Cards?
Yeah, no, that's a good show to watch.
Do you have any particular favorites on Netflix right now?
Yeah, on Hulu. I think on Hulu got Rick and Morty now. Eric Andre show. Um, stuff like that.
Um, this user asked, how should I try to help certain candidates get elected or try to make changes a person can't run for any political office yet?
Yeah, I mean, I would volunteer to knock doors. I know there's a tendency of people to just focus on social media. They've done the studies; it has almost no effect on the election result. Phone banking does a little bit. Um, Direct mailing does is a little bit more effective. Um, but actually, what we find is canvassing, knocking on somebody's porch, going to their front door is like 11 times more effective than sending somebody a mailer. So that would be my recommendations. Knock doors. Find a candidate that inspires you. Even if you have to drive, maybe maybe it's not even your like they're not necessarily running to represent you. You can't vote for them. You can still volunteer on their campaign if they're local. I know it's gonna be really appreciated. Just go out there, every day and try to, if you can, just knock doors for 3 hours. It's gonna make a difference. And that's the thing is, some people are gonna tell you what happened. Other people are gonna tell you what they did. And just think about which one you're gonna be, and use that to motivate you to be the change that you want to see.
Um, so you spoke about joining the military. Would would you do politics again after joining the military?
I mean, I think the focus would be, hopefully, the military is pretty hard. Do my 20 years, hopefully retire. That would be, I think that's the goal. Retire early. Get my military pension going. Um, Potential to retire early in my 50s. Hopefully, save up some money. To retire young, so I'm young enough to still, enjoy my retirement. Um, Hopefully, that's the goal. You can always get medically discharged from the military and then left to rot. Like my dad was actually medically discharged from the Air Force after only 3 years. So that happens as well. We'll see.
All right, so I think we're coming to the end of the AMA. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, just but when Bernie Sanders called for a revolution, that was a call for help, and just everybody just needs to go out there, get involved, stay off social media. Change is gonna come from the real world. Get involved with local campaigns, run for office yourself. Running for office, they make it seem like it's so difficult. Yet somehow a 19-year-old was able to do it. I'm now 20, about to go into my first term. If I can do it, you can do it. Um, Step up. There's no excuse. There's no excuse just to be sitting in your chair and not running for office. And if you believe in democracy, I feel like you have an obligation to run for office. So I think I'll just leave it off on that. And thank you everybody for listening, and just stay engaged.
All right, thank you for coming on. Um,
Thank
we'll
you,
make
little
sure to
Bill.
get this uploaded and to send you the file in a bit. And yeah, thank you very much and have a great day.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure. I hope to do it again.